Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And we're going to play catch up today because I didn't make a video on this channel yesterday. So we are going to read 2 meditations from Melody Beattie's The Language of Letting Go, the sister component book to Codependent No More. Yesterday's meditation is about detachment, and I have not read it yet. And today's meditation is about withholding. And so I have a feeling it's going to talk a lot about detaching with love and withholding emotions from others. And I think it's kind of, this double-edged sword in setting limits and boundaries for others and, learning how to sometimes distancing ourselves from people with love and compassion and things like that. So we're going to read these meditations and see what they're about. Both of those things are things that I still work on to this day. So it'll be interesting to see what these meditations are about. June 24th, detachment. Detachment doesn't come naturally for many of us. But once we realize the value of this recovery principle, we understand how vital detachment is. The following story illustrates how a woman came to understand detachment. The first time I practiced detachment was when I let go of my alcoholic husband. He had been drinking for 7 years since I had married him. For that long, I had been denying his alcoholism and trying to make him stop drinking. I did outrageous things to make him stop drinking, to make him see the light, to make him realize how much he was hurting me. I really thought I was doing things right by trying to control him. One night, I saw things clearly. I realized that my attempts to control him would never solve the problem. I also saw that my life was unmanageable. I couldn't make him do anything he didn't want to. His alcoholism was controlling me, even though I wasn't drinking. I set him free to do as he chose. The truth is, he did as he pleased anyway. Things changed that night, the night I detached. He could feel it, and so could I. When I set him free, I set myself free to live my own life. I've had to practice the principle of detachment many times since then. I've had to detach from unhealthy people and healthy people. It's never failed. Detachment works. Detachment is a gift. It will be given to us when we're ready for it. When we set the other person free, we are set free. Today, wherever possible, I will detach and love. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we stop having a relationship with that person. I don't know this person's story, so I don't know if she meant that she left the marriage or if she walked away or whatever she did. But, often we can detach from love while still remaining in that relationship. And what that means is not taking ownership over their behaviors or their actions and saying, you're over here, you're doing your thing, I'm over here. And one of the things that we have to remember is that the whole idea of codependency and the whole idea of Codependent No More in her book that she wrote really comes from an Al-Anon train of thinking, not an alcoholism or an addiction point of thinking. And Al-Anon is a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics and addicts. And so people think often that when you go to Al-Anon, they're going to fix your problems. That they're going to tell you, which they will. They will if you do what they tell you to do. But people often think that when you go, that they're going to say things like, if you do this, you can control your husband or wife. Or if you do this, you can solve all of your child's problems. And that's not the reality of what Al-Anon is about. Or Nar-Anon, which is another 12-step program for friends and family of addicts. Al-Anon is about helping you. It's about helping the friend and the family member. You work a 12-step program as well. You get a sponsor as well, and you work steps on yourself as an Al-Anon, as a person that is affected by an alcoholic or an addict, or has been at some point. I know people that are heavily involved in Al-Anon, and let's say they've been in it for 20 plus years from their alcoholic father that they haven't seen or talked to in 30 years, or that passed away 30 years ago. But they're still in Al-Anon today because many of their behaviors that they learned, just like I did, having grown up with an alcoholic mother, many of the behaviors that we learned growing up in an alcoholic or an addict home, we still display today, So one of the things that my best friend Tanya loves to do is she loves to drive. We'll go places. I drive everywhere, okay? I love to drive. I drive everywhere. I think everybody knows that. So we'll go over there and Tanya will say, or she'll call me up and she'll be like, do you want to go run some errands? And I'll say, yeah. And she'll say, okay, and I'll get over there and she'll say, today I'm driving. And I'll go, all right. And so I'll get in the passenger seat. And she goes, I think it's good for you to just be able to be a passenger and not have to worry about where we're going, where we're going to park, when we're going to get there, stoplights, whatever. She goes, I think it's good for you just to not be in control sometimes. And it's a valid lesson for me, in that I grew up in this environment where I felt like I didn't have a lot of control. A, because I grew up in an alcoholic home. B, because I was being bullied bullied relentlessly, right? So either situation, I didn't have any control. And so, you know, growing up, it was always this need to kind of have some control when I really didn't. And then C, with my own addiction, I mean, we already know addiction is about the lack of control in our lives, right? It's about something that we think that we can control that we can't, you know? And so it's detaching with love has been really important for me. I was just telling this to somebody the other day. Let me give you an example of how you can detach with love and not be hurtful to that person. So, it happened actually right here where I'm sitting in this living room. My mom and I can't remember how long she'd been sober, but at the time, I would say 5 or 6 years we had both been sober because I was in my master's program and I was working 50 to 60 hours a week. I was in a relationship. I had a roommate that was my best friend, and I felt really spread thin. Like, I just didn't know that I had a whole lot to give anybody else at that moment. And even that, I was trying to stop by and see my mom once or twice a week and spend, you know, a couple hours with her each time. And I remember, this has been so long ago, I've told the story so many times, I'm sure I've told it different times, you know, different ways, different times, but we were sitting here and we were talking and my mom said something about, I just don't feel like you see me very often anymore, you don't come over here, and, you know, I'm really sad and whatever. And I looked at her and honest to God, I have no idea where it came from. Probably I had watched Oprah or something about this, but I looked at her and I said, you know, Mom, I'm not responsible for your happiness. And I was like, did I just say that? And she goes, what did you just say? And I said, I'm not responsible for your happiness, you know? I'm sorry that you're sad right now, Mom. I'm sorry that you don't have a lot of friends in your life, but like, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm not responsible for you going out there and making friends and having this, I mean, you need to be responsible for your own life. And she said, do I make you feel that way? And I said, oh yeah, you make me feel that way. And she goes, well, I don't know, like if you said this to your parent or friend or whatever, you might get a completely different response. I mean, I feel blessed that my mother had enough insight and awareness into her own life that she didn't want to be that parent. And I will tell you, it did not stop that day, okay? It just didn't stop that day. She continued to do it a little bit. But she said to me, I don't want that to be the relationship that we have between each other. And she said, I don't want you to feel like you're responsible for my happiness. Okay, that is a way to set a boundary and to detach from love. And on that day, I kind of went forward in my life and I was like, you know, it's important for me to make Peter happy first, because if I'm not happy and I'm not healthy and I don't have peace of mind and serenity, I'm not good for anybody else. If I'm sitting here and I'm constantly worried about how's Mom doing, how's this person doing, then I'm not ever like taking care of myself, and then I'm not really giving fully what I could give if I was taking care of myself first. So I think it's important to detach from love, you know, and that at that point in my life, like that was toxic for me. It wasn't highly toxic, but our relationship wasn't what it could be. And then down the road, I looked back and, you know, our relationship turned into something fantastic. So, you know, that was just one example, but I think that it's hard for us to detach from love. And I think often we're in relationships where we think, well, if I'm going to detach with love, then that means I have to leave this relationship or I have to leave this friendship, you know? I think to have a conversation with somebody, and maybe it needs to happen 5 or 6 times where we have a conversation with somebody and we say, listen, okay, look, I need to set a boundary. And maybe they don't get it the first time. Maybe they don't get it the 4th time or the 5th time, you know? But to just ultimately just walk away from that friendship or that relationship because you aren't getting what you need, well, maybe we need to give that other person a chance to change as well, you know? To show that, you know, over time they can learn to be different. But maybe we have a part in that too. And maybe our part in that is detaching with love, you know, saying, I care about you enough, I love you enough that I'm not going to engage in this craziness that you're part of anymore. So yes, I still want to be your friend, I still want to be your romantic partner, but I'm not going to buy your beer, I'm not going to, you know, do this, I'm not going to condone it, and I'm going to have an issue with it. And if it continues, then at that point, then I probably am going to have to make a decision in my life, you know? And I don't know, and I think that's where people need to seek some professional help and sit down with somebody that, you know, is a relationship therapist that can talk to them about that. But I do think it's important for us to set limits and boundaries with people, and it's hard. It's really hard, especially with family members, you know? All right, the next meditation is called Withholding, and that is from today, June 25th. Sometimes, to protect ourselves, we close ourselves off from a person we're in a relationship with. Our body may be present, but we're not. We're not available to participate in the relationship. We shut down. Sometimes it is appropriate and healthy to shut down in a relationship. We may legitimately need some time out. Sometimes it is self-defeating to close ourselves off in a relationship. To stop being vulnerable, honest, and present for another person can put an end to the relationship. The other person can do nothing in the relationship when we are gone. Closing ourselves makes us unavailable to that relationship. It is common to go through temporary periods of closing down in a relationship, but it is unhealthy to make this an ongoing practice. It may be one of our relationship sabotaging devices, and this is where I would say that people need to seek relationship counseling, definitely. Before we close down, we need to ask ourselves what we are hoping to accomplish by shutting down. Do we need some time to deal, to heal, to grow, to sort through things? Do we need time out from this relationship? Or are we reverting to our old ways, hiding, running, and terminating relationships because we are afraid we cannot take care of ourselves in any other way? Do we need to shut down because the other person truly isn't safe, is manipulating, lying, or acting out addictively or abusively? Are we shutting down because the other person has shut down and we no longer want to be available? Shutting down, shutting off, closing ourselves off, and removing our emotional presence from a relationship is a powerful tool. We need to use it carefully and responsibly. To achieve intimacy and closeness in a relationship, we need to be present emotionally. We need to be available. God, help me be emotionally present in the relationships I choose to be in. What a powerful meditation, you know, to think about the fact that we all shut down at some point. This is kind of like, you guys remember the silent treatment back in the day? And that's ultimately when we shut down, what we're saying is, I have ultimate control over this situation right now. And again, it's a lot about control, you know, and saying, I'm not going to let this person hurt me, and I'm shutting down because I'm not going to let you in, and I'm not going to let you in anymore, right? When I think a lot of times what we're doing in those situations, or at least I have done in those situations, is I'm crying out for help. I'm saying, notice me, notice me, notice my needs, notice my wants, notice what I want from you, but instead I'm going to shut you out so that you can beg for, like, it's this game, right? Who wants to play games in relationships? I'm not any good at games like that, you know? I'm better when somebody just comes out and asks me for what they need, and then I can typically, you know, give that to them or work on it, right? One of the most valuable lessons that my husband and I learned in relationship counseling so far is, I think it's like 10 or 12 points of intimacy. And we all think about intimacy as being like sex, right? Or physical intimacy, and it's not. Like, that's one of them. But there's so many more, and I don't have this sheet with me, but I'll do a whole video on it sometime. I think I actually did at one point. But there's spiritual intimacy, intellectual intimacy, recreational intimacy, financial intimacy, you know, on and on and on. I can't think of the other ones, but emotional intimacy. And it's about connecting at all of those points, right? So when we start shutting down, it's fraying that. We're shutting down one by one on all of those levels, not just physical intimacy, but in all honesty, sometimes physical intimacy is either the first thing that goes or the last thing that goes. And then we want to relate our relationship to just being about physical intimacy. When we talk about friendships or work relationships and things like that, and shutting people off, whatever, you know, it's like, what are we really wanting to achieve? I think that's the question I ask myself today. Like, when I find myself closing people out or not wanting to talk to them, or, you know, like, I've never played the silent treatment game, but, you know, like when you start shutting people out of your life, I like to ask myself, what am I really seeking to achieve by this? Like, what is my end game? Like, what do I want? What is my motive? One of the most powerful questions I've ever, you know, been presented in recovery, that whenever I'm like participating in a certain behavior or acting a certain way, my sponsor will always say, all of my sponsors have said this to me, what is your motive? Like, what are you doing in this situation? Like, what's your end game, right? And, you know, it's important to ask yourself that, because I think sometimes we act in ways that we don't even know what we're doing. You know, we're like, screw her, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not talking to her right now. She'll get it sooner or later. I don't have to talk to her. But like, really, what are we wanting? Are we wanting validation? Are we wanting somebody to say to you, you know, like, hey, I'm so thankful for your friendship, and you don't, you know, like, validate me enough? Are we in relationships where we feel like the other person doesn't carry their weight, you know, or we aren't loved enough, or they don't bring us flowers, or what is it that we want, right? Because I can tell you what I have learned in almost 47 years is that it is much easier to scream from the mountaintops and to communicate to the person in front of us what we want from them, and allow them to say, no, I'm not going to give that to you, or yes, allow me to work on that and be better at it, and know where we stand, than to stay silent and let them guess. Because I can tell you, I am no good at guessing what somebody needs, and 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong. So if somebody's playing me the guessing game, and I'm trying to figure out, like, what did I do wrong? What are they wanting from me? Whatever. It would be much better if they came out and just said, these are the things I need from you. When we talk about communication in relationships, like, that has been paramount, paramount in my relationship with my husband. You know, today, if we have like an argument over something small that starts to escalate, we stop ourselves and we'll say to each other, okay, he'll say, my husband will say, what do you need to hear right now? Or I'll say to him, like, what do you need me to hear? What do you want me to do in this situation, you know? And we'll stop and he'll say, I just want you to, you know, be willing to do the trash. Or I'll say, you know, hey, I just wish, like, when you came in the door, you're not always on the phone. You know, like, these small arguments that escalate into huger issues, we stop it now where it's at. That's called communication. That's being honest with the other person about what is it you're really saying to me, because sometimes we don't know. Have you ever had your, like, partner come in the house and they're just pissed off for no reason, and you don't know if it's from work or road rage or a bad phone call that they got? You have no idea, right? But it's affecting you, and you've done nothing wrong but cleaned the house, gotten dinner ready, you know what I mean? Like, and you're all of a sudden like, what did I do? We don't play that game in our house anymore, okay? We just don't. And if one of us has had a bad day, the other person tells that person, hey, listen, I've had a bad day, it's not about you. I think I need some space before I interact with another human being, because I'm just not in a place right now, you know, to be like, I shouldn't be around anybody right now. You know, my best friend always says that to me. She goes, if she's had a tough day, she'll say, like, I'm not in a position to be around anybody right now. I'm just not. I need a few hours to myself. As human beings, we are allowed to have that time. But I think there's a lot of lost relationships, a lot of lost friendships, a lot of lost working environments and relationships, because we aren't really willing to communicate with one another what we really need, you know? How often have you complained to your best friend about your partner, but you've never been willing to go to your partner and say what you're complaining about to your best friend? Shouldn't we be having those conversations with the person that we love? I mean, I know I should be. And those were mistakes that I was making in the past. You know, my husband was going to his best friend, I was going to my best friend. We weren't talking to each other, you know? Now we talk to each other. And it has strengthened our relationship in a way that I never had imagined. So, you know, I think that this whole idea of withholding from the other person, we're really just hurting ourselves in the long run, you know? And once you can see that, and you can see your motive in that, it's much easier to ask yourself in that situation, what do I want in this situation? And wouldn't it be easier for me just to ask for that? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed those meditations. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.